The research ship Horizon floated in the darkness of space far from Earth. Captain Jacob Harrison stood on the bridge, staring at something that should not exist. A hole in space itself hung before them, swirling with colors that hurt to look at for too long. "How long has it been there?" Jacob asked his science officer. 3 days now," Amy Chen replied, checking her screens. "It's not moving. Not getting bigger or smaller. Just sitting there like it's waiting for something." Jacob had been in space for 20 years. He had seen solar storms, asteroid fields, and dying stars, but nothing like this. The wormhole, as the scientists called it, was a mystery that pulled at something deep inside him. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Dr. Peter Walsh walked onto the bridge carrying a tablet full of data. He was the smartest person on the ship, and even he looked confused. "We've run every test we can from here. The readings don't make sense. That thing shouldn't be stable. Every theory says it should collapse in seconds, but it's just sitting there. Can we send something through?" Jacob asked. "A probe went through 2 hours ago," Peter said. "We lost contact the moment it entered." No signal came back. Jacob nodded slowly. He knew what was coming next. Someone would have to go through in person. That was always how it worked. Machines could only tell you so much. Sometimes you needed human eyes and human judgment. The call came from Earth Command the next day. They wanted a volunteer, someone brave enough or crazy enough to fly into a tear in reality and see what was on the other side. The volunteer would have 1 hour to explore, then return through the same wormhole. Captain Daniel Pierce stepped forward before anyone else could. He was a pilot, one of the best in the fleet, tall and lean with bright blue eyes that always seemed to be looking at something far away. He had survived dangers that would have killed other people. Everyone trusted him. "I'll go," Daniel said simply. Jacob pulled him aside. "You don't have to do this. We can wait for someone else," Daniel smiled. "Someone has to be first, Jacob. It might as well be someone who knows what they're doing." The crew prepared a small exploration pod for Daniel. They packed it with sensors, cameras, and enough supplies to keep him alive for days if something went wrong. The pod was cramped and uncomfortable, but it was the best they had. Daniel climbed inside and sealed the hatch. Through the small window, he gave Jacob a thumbs up. The bay doors opened and the pod drifted out into space. Small engines fired, pushing it toward the wormhole. Everyone on the bridge watched in silence. Amy's fingers flew over her controls, recording every piece of data. Peter muttered calculations under his breath. Jacob just watched, his jaw tight with worry. "Approaching the edge now." Daniel's voice crackled over the radio. "Everything looks normal." Well, as normal as a hole in space can look. The pod touched the edge of the wormhole. For a moment, it seemed to stretch, like it was being pulled in 2 different directions at once. Light bent around it in ways that made Jacob's eyes water. Then it was gone. "Contact lost," Amy said quietly. "No signal at all." Jacob checked the clock on the wall. 1 hour. That's what they had agreed on. 1 hour to explore, then Daniel would come back. The first hour passed slowly. The crew tried to work, but everyone kept glancing at the wormhole, hoping to see the pod emerge. Nothing happened. 2 hours. 3 hours. 4 hours. "He should be back by now," Amy said. She sounded worried. "I know," Jacob replied. They waited through the night. The bridge crew changed shifts, but Jacob stayed. He couldn't leave. Not while Daniel was out there somewhere, lost in whatever existed on the other side of that hole in space. 6 hours after Daniel had entered the wormhole, the sensors started beeping. Something was coming through. "Contact!" Amy shouted. "The pod is coming back!" The small craft tumbled out of the wormhole, spinning slowly. Its white hull was scorched black in places, like it had been through a fire. But it was intact, and according to the sensors, Daniel was still alive inside. "Get a tractor beam on it," Jacob ordered. "Bring it into the quarantine bay. Full safety protocols." The ship's tractor beam grabbed the pod and pulled it gently into a sealed chamber. Medical teams in protective suits rushed to the window. Through the glass, they could see Daniel sitting in the pilot's seat. He wasn't moving. His eyes were open, staring straight ahead. His hands rested on his knees. He looked calm, peaceful even. But he didn't respond to the lights flashing or the people waving at him. "Open the pod," Jacob said. Dr. Lisa Grant, the ship's doctor, approached carefully. She was a cautious woman who never took risks with her patients. She scanned Daniel with a handheld device, checking for radiation, disease, anything that might be dangerous. "His vital signs are normal," she said, sounding surprised. Heart rate, breathing, temperature. Everything is exactly as it should be. Daniel, Jacob called over the intercom. Can you hear me? This is Jacob. You're back on the horizon. You're safe. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Daniel's head turned slowly. His eyes focused on the window where Jacob stood. When he spoke, his voice sounded wrong. It was still Daniel's voice, but there was something else underneath it. Like 100 people speaking at the same time, all saying the same words. Jacob, Daniel said, I have returned, but I'm afraid Daniel Pierce did not come back alone. Jacob felt a chill run down his spine. What do you mean? Daniel stood up smoothly. Too smoothly. Like gravity didn't quite affect him the same way anymore. I went through the wormhole. I saw what was on the other side. And what was on the other side saw me. What did you see? Peter asked, pressing closer to the glass. I saw a place where the rules are different, Daniel said. His eyes seemed to glow faintly in the dim light of the quarantine chamber, where thought and matter are the same thing, where consciousness exists without bodies, where beings live that are older than stars. Lisa ran more scans, her frown deepening. His brain activity is off the charts. I've never seen patterns like this. But physically, he's fine. There's nothing wrong with him. Something is different, Jacob said. I can feel it. Daniel smiled, and for a moment he looked like the friend Jacob had known for years. You're right to be cautious. I'm not the same person who entered that wormhole. I've been changed, enhanced, given abilities that no human has ever had before. What kind of abilities? Amy asked. I can see things now, Daniel said softly. Things that are hidden from normal human senses. I can feel the thoughts of everyone on this ship. I can perceive dimensions that you can't even imagine. I can look out into space and see planets light years away as clearly as you see me now. Peter shook his head. That's impossible. Test me, Daniel said. Ask me something that only someone with these abilities would know. Amy stepped forward. What am I thinking right now? Daniel's glowing eyes fixed on her. You're thinking about your sister, Kate. She's sick back on Earth. You haven't talked to her in weeks because messages take so long to arrive. You're worried about her. You wish you could be there. Amy's face went pale. How did you know that? I never told anyone about Kate. Because I can hear your thoughts, Daniel said gently. Not words exactly. More like feelings and images. You're broadcasting them without knowing it, and now I can receive them. Jacob's hand moved to the weapon on his belt. If you can read our minds, then you're dangerous. How do we know you're still Daniel? How do we know you're not something else wearing his body? Daniel looked sad. Do you remember Mars Station 7? 4 years ago? You got drunk one night and told me about your daughter. About the accident. About how you blamed yourself for not being there. You made me promise never to tell anyone. Jacob's breath caught. That was true. He had never spoken of it to anyone else. I'm still Daniel, the changed man said. But I'm also more now. And I came back to warn you. Something is coming. Something terrible. And if humanity doesn't prepare, if you don't change like I've changed, then everyone will die. The bridge fell silent. Outside the window, the wormhole continued to swirl in the darkness, patient and waiting. Whatever had changed, Daniel was still out there, watching from the other side of reality. And according to him, humanity's time was running out. Dr. Lisa Grant couldn't sleep. She had run every test she could think of on Daniel Pierce, and every result came back normal. His blood was human blood. His DNA was unchanged. His organs functioned perfectly. But Lisa had worked with Daniel for 3 years. She knew him. And the man in the quarantine chamber was different in ways that no test could measure. She watched him through the glass. He sat cross-legged on the floor, not moving, barely breathing. His eyes were closed, but somehow Lisa felt like he was watching everything around him. Like he could see through walls and metal in her protective suit. Can't sleep either. Jacob's voice made her jump. The captain had entered the observation room quietly. He's been sitting like that for 6 hours, Lisa said. No food, no water. Not even shifting position. Normal humans can't do that. He's not claiming to be normal anymore, Jacob replied. He looked tired. The stress of the situation was showing on his face. What do you think happened to him in there? I don't know. But whatever it was, it changed him on a level I can't detect with medical equipment. It's like he's still human on the outside, but inside he's become something else. Daniel's eyes opened. Even through the thick glass and across the room, Lisa could feel his gaze lock onto them. He stood and walked to the window. You're both wondering if you should trust me, Daniel said. His voice came through the intercom, still carrying that strange quality like multiple voices speaking together. You're thinking about the safety of the crew, about Earth, about whether I'm a threat. Are you? Jacob asked bluntly. I could be, Daniel said honestly. The power I have now is beyond anything humans have known. I could kill everyone on this ship with a thought. I could take control of your systems. I could do many terrible things. Lisa's hand moved toward the emergency button that would flood the quarantine chamber with sleep gas. But I won't, Daniel continued, because I'm still the man you knew. I still care about humanity. I still want to protect Earth. The entity that changed me didn't make me its slave. It gave me a gift because it saw something worth saving in our species. What entity? Peter Walsh entered the room, carrying his ever-present tablet. You mentioned beings on the other side. What are they? Daniel sat down on the floor of the chamber, crossing his legs again. Imagine if every thought ever thought, every dream ever dreamed, every idea ever conceived existed as a living thing. That's what lives in the space between dimensions. It's not a creature. It's more like consciousness itself, pure and infinite. That sounds like God, Lisa said quietly. It's not God. It's older than any God humans have imagined. It exists outside of time. It has watched universes be born and die. It has seen countless species rise and fall. And it's interested in humanity because we're different from most species it has observed. Jacob pulled up a chair. Different how? Most intelligent species, when they discover the wormhole, send machines through first. They study it for years, decades even, before risking a life. But humans? You sent a probe, lost contact, and immediately decided to send a person. You don't wait. You don't hesitate. You rush toward the unknown instead of backing away from it. Peter nodded slowly. The entity was testing us. Yes, and we passed. Or failed, depending on your point of view. The entity decided that humanity has potential, that we could become something greater than we are. So it offered me a choice. Return unchanged or accept a gift that would let me see reality as it truly is. And you accepted, Amy said, entering the room. She had been listening from the doorway. I did, because the entity showed me something. A warning. Something is coming for Earth. Something that makes the entity in the wormhole look small and weak by comparison. The room went cold. Lisa felt her stomach clench. What's coming? Jacob asked. Daniel stood and placed his hand on the glass. Where his palm touched, the material seemed to shimmer slightly. They call themselves the cleaners, though that's not really a word. It's more like a concept translated into something your minds can understand. They've existed since the early universe. Their purpose is to maintain order, to prevent chaos, to keep younger species from spreading too far, too fast. They destroy civilizations, Peter said, his face pale. Yes. They've been watching humanity for thousands of years, waiting to see if you would stay on Earth, content with one world. But you didn't. You reached for Mars, then the outer planets, then other star systems. You're expanding too quickly for their liking. They've decided you're a threat to the cosmic order they protect. When will they arrive? Jacob's voice was steady, but Lisa could see his hands shaking. 4 years and 9 months. They're already on their way. 17 ships, each larger than a moon, moving through space in ways that bend the laws of physics. When they arrive, they'll deploy machines that will strip Earth of its atmosphere, boil the oceans, and crack the crust. Nothing will survive. Amy slumped against the wall. Can we fight them? Not as you are now. Their technology is millions of years more advanced than yours. Their weapons can destroy planets. Their shields can't be penetrated by anything humans currently have. If they arrive and you're still normal humans, you'll die without even slowing them down. But, Jacob prompted. There was always a but. There had to be. But you can change. Like I changed, the entity gave me this gift not just to warn you, but to show you the path. If enough humans undergo the transformation, if enough of you learn to see beyond normal reality, then you'll have a chance. A small chance, but better than none. Lisa spoke up. You're talking about changing humanity. Fundamentally, we don't even know what this transformation does long term. What if there are side effects? What if it damages us in ways we can't predict? Then some will die, Daniel said flatly. The transformation is dangerous. Not everyone survives it. Some minds can't handle the expansion of consciousness. They break under the strain. But if you do nothing, everyone dies. The cleaners don't negotiate. They don't show mercy. They simply erase problems and move on. Peter was typing furiously on his tablet. We need to verify this. We need proof that what you're saying is true. Fair enough, Daniel said. In 3 weeks, your deep space monitoring station at the edge of the solar system will detect a gravitational anomaly. A massive distortion moving through the Oort cloud at impossible speeds. That will be one of the cleaner's scout ships. When you detect it, you'll know I'm telling the truth. Jacob stood. If you are telling the truth, then we have less than 5 years to prepare for a war against an enemy we can't comprehend with weapons we haven't invented yet. Yes. And the only way to win is to transform humanity into something no longer fully human. Yes, Jacob walked to the glass and looked Daniel in the eyes. Whatever he saw there must have satisfied him because he nodded slowly. We wait 3 weeks. We verify your prediction. If it comes true, then we discuss what happens next. And if the prediction is wrong, Daniel asked, then you stay in this chamber until we figure out what you really are. The next 3 weeks were the longest of Lisa's life. She continued monitoring Daniel, watching as he sat in meditation for hours, barely moving. Sometimes his eyes would glow brighter and she could swear she heard humming in her mind, a sound that wasn't a sound, more like a feeling of vibration that resonated in her skull. Peter became obsessed with the wormhole. He studied it constantly, trying to understand its nature. Amy threw herself into reviewing the ship's defense systems, preparing for threats that might or might not be coming. Jacob spent long hours in his quarters, writing reports to Earth Command that he knew sounded insane. The crew was scared. Rumors spread through the horizon like wildfire. Some said Daniel was an alien wearing human skin. Others claimed he was possessed by a demon. A few believed he was telling the truth, and that terrified them more than any lie. On day 20, a priority message came through from the Deep Space Monitoring Station. Lisa was in the medical bay when the alarm sounded. She ran to the bridge, arriving just as Jacob opened the transmission. Commander Harrison, this is Outpost Zeta 9. We have detected a massive gravitational anomaly passing through the outer Oort cloud. Repeat, massive gravitational anomaly. It's moving at 0.27 light speed. We have no explanation for what this could be. Requesting immediate analysis. The bridge fell silent. Everyone turned to look at the monitor showing Daniel in his chamber. He was smiling sadly. Jacob pulled up the data Daniel had provided 3 weeks earlier. The trajectory matched perfectly. The speed matched. Everything matched. He was right, Amy whispered. Peter's tablet slipped from his hands and clattered to the floor. They're really coming. The cleaners are real. Lisa felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. Everything Daniel had said was true. In less than 5 years, an ancient alien force would arrive at Earth with the intention of wiping out humanity. And the only way to survive was to change into something that might not be human anymore. Jacob walked slowly to the intercom. Daniel, I know, came the reply. You detected the scout ship. What do we do now? Now, Jacob, you make a choice. The hardest choice any human has ever had to make. You decide whether to stay human and die or to evolve and possibly survive. Jacob looked around at his crew, at Amy, who had served with him for 8 years, at Peter, whose brilliant mind had solved countless problems, at Lisa. The neural link chamber looked more like a torture device than medical equipment. 2 chairs faced each other, surrounded by machines that blinked and hummed. Wires hung from the ceiling like vines. Dr. Lisa Grant had built it in 3 days, working with almost no sleep, following specifications that Daniel had provided. Jacob Harrison sat in one chair, trying not to show his fear. Across from him, Daniel Pierce sat perfectly calm, his glowing blue eyes watching everything with an intensity that made Jacob's skin crawl. Electrodes covered both their heads, attached to wires that connected to monitoring equipment. Once we begin, you cannot stop, Daniel warned. If you break the connection too soon, the shock could kill you or leave you brain damaged. You have to see it through to the end, no matter what you experience. How bad will it be? Jacob asked. Imagine every piece of information in the universe trying to fit into your mind at the same time. Your brain will try to process it all and it will fail. The pain will be intense. You'll see things that don't make sense. You'll feel like you're dying. But you have to hold on. You have to let it happen. Lisa stood at the monitoring station, her face tight with worry. Commander, this is insane. We have no idea what this will do to you. Noted, Jacob said. But we're doing it anyway. Amy Chen and Peter Walsh stood in the observation room watching through reinforced glass. The entire senior staff was present, ready to witness whatever happened next. If Jacob died, they would need to decide whether to try again with someone else or report back to Earth Command that the transformation was impossible. "Ready?" Daniel asked. Jacob nodded, not trusting his voice. "Then take my hand." Jacob reached across the space between the chairs. His hand touched Daniel's and the world exploded. Pain shot through his skull like someone had driven a spike through his temples. He tried to scream, but his throat wouldn't work. His body locked up, rigid in the chair. The monitoring equipment started shrieking alarms. Then the visions began. Jacob saw stars being born in clouds of gas and dust. He watched planets form from spinning disks of rock and ice. He witnessed life crawling from ancient oceans, evolving, spreading, dying, being reborn. Billions of years of history flashed past in seconds. The scale of it broke his mind. He was seeing too much, understanding too much, experiencing existence from perspectives that human brains were never meant to handle. He wanted it to stop. He wanted to pull away, to end the connection, to return to the simple clarity of normal human perception. But he couldn't. His body wouldn't respond. He was trapped in the flow of cosmic information, drowning in knowledge that had no words, no concepts, no way to be organized or understood. "Don't fight it," Daniel's voice echoed in his mind. "Stop trying to understand. Just observe. Let it flow through you." Jacob tried to relax, to stop his brain from frantically attempting to categorize and analyze. Slowly, the chaos began to resolve into patterns. He could see the mathematical structures underlying reality, the elegant equations that governed everything from the smallest atom to the largest galaxy. He saw Earth, tiny and blue and fragile, spinning in the darkness. He could see every city, every person, all those billions of lives continuing without any idea of the danger approaching. He wanted to reach out, to warn them, to protect them all. "Look deeper," Daniel urged. Jacob pushed his awareness further. He saw the quantum foam that existed beneath visible reality, particles popping in and out of existence, probability waves collapsing into definite states. The 11 dimensions that physicists had theorized about, all folded and hidden within the 4 dimensions humans normally experienced. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. It was more real than anything he had ever known. And then he saw the cleaners. They existed partially outside normal space. Their true forms spanned multiple dimensions, impossible to fully perceive with human senses. But Jacob could see them now. 17 massive ships moving through the darkness between stars, patient and inevitable. They had been watching humanity for thousands of years. They had seen humans discover fire, invent the wheel, split the atom, reach for the stars, and they had judged humanity to be dangerous. Not because of what humans were, but because of what humans might become. The cleaners had seen it before. Species that expanded too quickly, that adapted too readily, that refused to accept the natural order of the universe. Those species had to be eliminated before they could spread like a cancer across the galaxy. But Jacob also saw something else. He saw what the entity in the wormhole had recognized. Humanity's potential, the creative spark that allowed humans to imagine solutions to impossible problems. The stubborn refusal to give up even when defeat seemed certain. The ability to work together despite differences. That potential scared the cleaners. They didn't fear human weapons or human ships. They feared human imagination, human determination, human unpredictability. "Do you understand now?" Daniel's voice asked. "Yes," Jacob gasped, his actual voice in the real world barely a whisper. "I see it all, then remember. Remember what you've witnessed. You are the first. Others will follow. Together you will save your species." The connection broke. Jacob crashed back into his body like falling from a great height. He gasped for air, his heart hammering, his entire body covered in sweat. The monitoring equipment was screaming. Lisa rushed to his side. "Jacob! Can you hear me?" His eyes snapped open. Lisa stumbled backward with a cry. His eyes were glowing with the same blue light that illuminated Daniel's gaze. "I can hear you," Jacob said, and his voice carried that strange, harmonic quality. "I can hear everything." The transformation had worked. Over the next 3 days, Jacob learned to control his new abilities. The constant flood of information gradually became manageable. He could focus his perception, filtering out the noise. It was like learning to walk again, but with senses that reached beyond normal human limits. He could feel the emotions of his crew, not reading their minds exactly, but sensing their fear, their hope, their determination. He could see the quantum probability clouds surrounding every decision. He could perceive the cleaner's ships distant but drawing closer every day, and he began to understand what needed to be done. "We need more," Jacob told Daniel on the fourth day. "We need people who can see what we see, who can design weapons and defenses that work across multiple dimensions." "I agree. But many will die in the attempt, I know. But more will die if we do nothing." They called a meeting of the senior staff. Jacob stood before them, his glowing eyes sweeping across their faces. He could feel their fear when they looked at him. He wasn't the captain they had known. He was something else now, something that frightened them even as they relied on him to save them. "I'm calling for volunteers," Jacob said. 5 people to undergo the transformation. You've seen what it did to me. You know the risks. But we need more awakened humans if we're going to have any chance against the cleaners." Silence filled the room. Everyone looked at each other, waiting for someone else to step forward. Amy stood first. "I'll do it." "Amy, you don't have to," Jacob said. "Yes, I do. If we fail, my sister dies along with everyone else. If there's even a chance this works, I have to try." Peter stood next. "I'm in. We need scientific minds who can understand the new physics you're seeing." 3 others volunteered. Lieutenant Kevin Brooks, a weapons specialist. Ensign Sarah Miller, an engineer. Dr. Frank Chen, a physicist. All of them knowing they might die but willing to risk it for the small chance of saving humanity. The transformations began the next day. Kevin went first. He was a big man, tough and confident. He had survived 3 combat situations and never shown fear. But when the neural link connected and the flood of cosmic information hit him, he started screaming. His body convulsed in the chair. The monitoring equipment redlined. "He's having a seizure," Lisa shouted. "We need to break the connection." "No," Daniel said firmly. "He has to push through. His mind is fighting the expansion. If we stop now, he'll be trapped in a half-transformed state." Kevin's screams turned to whimpers. His eyes rolled back in his head. Blood trickled from his nose. For 3 terrible minutes, everyone thought he was going to die. Then his body relaxed. His breathing steadied. His eyes opened, glowing with blue light. "I see it," Kevin whispered. "I see everything." Sarah's transformation was easier. She seemed to adapt quickly, her engineer's mind accepting the new information and organizing it into patterns she could understand. Within 5 minutes, she emerged changed but stable. Frank wasn't so lucky. The physicist's mind tried too hard to understand what it was experiencing. Instead of letting the information flow through him, he grasped at it, tried to analyze it, attempted to force it into frameworks of understanding that couldn't contain it. His brain overloaded. He died in the chair, his heart simply stopping as his mind broke under the strain. Lisa pulled his body from the neural link chamber, tears streaming down her face. "This has to stop. We're killing people. We're at war," Jacob said quietly. His voice was sad but firm. "In war, people die." Frank knew the risks. He chose to try. Amy's transformation took the longest, 7 minutes of shaking and gasping and silent tears, but she survived. When she opened her glowing eyes, she smiled weakly at Jacob. "It's beautiful," she said. "Terrible and beautiful." Peter was the last. His transformation was smooth, almost easy. The message from Earth Command arrived 2 days later. Admiral Henry Brooks appeared on the screen, his weathered face showing every one of his 60 years. He looked like a man who had just been told the world was ending. "Commander Harrison, I've reviewed your report 3 times. I've shown it to the Joint Chiefs, the President, and every scientist we could trust with this information. Frankly, half of them think you've lost your mind." Jacob sat at his desk, his glowing blue eyes reflecting in the monitor. "And the other half, sir?" "The other half are terrified that you're right. The gravitational anomaly at Outpost Zeta 9 was confirmed by 3 other monitoring stations. Something massive is moving through our solar system. Something that shouldn't exist according to everything we know about physics." The Admiral leaned forward. "I need to ask you something, and I need an honest answer. Are you still human, Jacob? Are you still the man I served with on the Europa mission?" Jacob considered the question carefully. "I still have all my memories. I still care about the same things I always did. But my perception has expanded beyond what normal humans can experience. In that sense, no, I'm not entirely human anymore. But I'm still Jacob Harrison. I'm still loyal to Earth. And I'm still trying to save lives." Brooks nodded slowly. "That's what I needed to hear. The President has authorized Operation Awakening. We're going to begin transformation centers on Earth, Mars, and the major colonies. We'll call for volunteers, people who are willing to risk death for a chance to defend humanity. How many facilities? Jacob asked. 20 to start. If the process proves viable, we'll expand. Our goal is to transform 10,000 people in the first year. If we can maintain that pace, we'll have 50,000 awakened humans by the time the cleaners arrive. Peter Walsh, listening from across the room, shook his head. That's not enough. The cleaners have ships the size of moons. Even 50,000 awakened humans might not be sufficient. It's all we can do, Brooks replied. We can't force people to undergo this transformation. It has to be voluntary. And even with volunteers, we're going to lose people. The mortality rate you reported is 20%. That's 1 in 5 people dying. We're asking people to play Russian roulette with their lives. Better than certain death when the cleaners arrive, Amy said. The Admiral sighed. I agree. That's why we're moving forward. Commander, you and your team will return to Earth. We need you to train the first group of transformation specialists, people who can guide others through the neural link process. Understood, sir. We'll depart within the hour. The journey back to Earth took 3 weeks. During that time, Jacob and his small group of awakened humans worked constantly. They developed training protocols. They studied the neural link process, trying to understand why some people survived and others didn't. They practiced using their new abilities, learning to focus their expanded perception. Sarah Miller discovered she could manipulate quantum probabilities, not dramatically, but enough to influence small outcomes. She could make a coin flip land on heads more often than chance would allow. She could guide particles to specific positions. It was a subtle power, but Jacob immediately saw the military applications. Kevin Brooks found he could perceive energy fields. He could see the electrical systems of the ship, follow the flow of power through the circuits. He began designing weapons that could disrupt enemy systems across multiple dimensions. Peter's gift was understanding. Complex scientific theories that would have taken months to learn, he could now grasp in minutes. He started developing new physics equations that described how reality worked in the hidden dimensions, and Amy discovered something that frightened everyone. She could sense the cleaners directly. She could feel their cold, ancient intelligence focused on Earth. She could hear their thoughts, though thoughts wasn't quite the right word. More like mathematical certainty. They had calculated humanity's threat level. They had determined the appropriate response. They were coming and nothing would stop them. How long until they arrive? Jacob asked her one night as they stood in the observation lounge, watching stars slide past. 4 years, 7 months, 3 days, Amy said softly. I can feel them getting closer. It's like a weight pressing down on my mind. They don't hate us, Jacob. That would be easier to accept. They just see us as a problem to be solved, an equation to be balanced. We're going to prove them wrong. I hope so. But I've seen their ships in my visions. They're massive beyond comprehension, and there are thousands more where those 17 came from. If we win this battle, they'll just send more, and more after that. We can't fight them forever. Jacob put his hand on her shoulder. We don't have to fight forever. We just have to prove we're too dangerous to eliminate casually. Make them think twice about attacking us. Show them that humanity will cost them more than they're willing to pay. Earth looked different through awakened eyes. Jacob could see the electromagnetic fields surrounding the planet. He could perceive the quantum fluctuations in the atmosphere. He could sense the billions of human minds going about their lives, unaware of the danger approaching. The transformation centers had been built in remote locations, underground facilities where volunteers would undergo the neural link process away from population centers. The government wanted to avoid panic if something went wrong. Jacob visited the first center in Colorado. It was carved into a mountain, with reinforced walls and sealed chambers. Dr. Lisa Grant had been placed in charge. She was one of the few senior staff who had refused the transformation, preferring to remain fully human so she could monitor the process objectively. We have 500 volunteers for the first round, Lisa told Jacob as they walked through the facility. All military personnel, people who understand the risks and are willing to sacrifice for the mission. Have you told them about Frank? Jacob asked. Yes. They know the mortality rate. They know some of them will die. They're doing it anyway. The first transformation session began that evening. 20 volunteers in 20 chambers, all connected to awakened guides who would help them through the process. Jacob took one chamber himself. A young soldier named Carl Henderson sat across from him, trying to hide his fear. "I won't lie to you," Jacob said. "This will be the hardest thing you've ever done. The pain will be intense. You'll want to quit. But if you hold on, if you make it through, you'll become something amazing." "Will I still be me?" Carl asked. He couldn't have been more than 25 years old. "Yes. You'll still have all your memories, your personality, your values. You'll just see more, understand more, be capable of more." "Then let's do it." Jacob reached across and took Carl's hand. The neural link formed, and he guided the young soldier's consciousness into the expanded perception. He felt Carl's mind struggling with the flood of information, saw the moment when he almost broke. Jacob pushed encouragement through the link, showed him how to stop fighting and start accepting. 7 minutes later, Carl opened his glowing blue eyes and smiled weakly. That was insane. "Welcome to the Awakened," Jacob said. Of the 20 volunteers in that first session, 16 survived. The 4 who died had their bodies treated with honor, their families told they had died in service of humanity's survival. It wasn't exactly a lie. The transformation continued. Day after day, week after week, volunteers entered the chambers. Some emerged changed and powerful, others never emerged at all. The mortality rate held steady at 20%. For every 5 people who tried, 1 died. But the awakened grew in number. 500 became 1,000. 1,000 became 5,000. The transformation centers expanded to 30 locations worldwide. Mars Colony started its own program. The orbital stations began training their personnel, and with each new awakened human, humanity grew stronger. Sarah trained others to manipulate quantum probabilities. Teams of awakened learned to work together, combining their subtle influences to create larger effects. They could guide missiles to targets with impossible accuracy. They could cause enemy weapons to misfire. They could shift the odds in humanity's favor. Kevin and his team developed weapons that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Missiles that could phase through normal shields. Energy beams that struck from directions that didn't exist in 3-dimensional space. Bombs that collapsed probability waves in devastating ways. Peter created a new branch of physics. He wrote equations that described 11-dimensional combat. He designed shields that wrapped ships in folded space-time, making them nearly impossible to hit. He calculated strategies that took quantum uncertainty into account. And Amy coordinated it all. She could sense the cleaners approaching, track their movements, predict their tactics. She became the early warning system that Earth desperately needed. 2 years passed. Then 3. The awakened numbered 47,000. Earth's defense fleet was being retrofitted with weapons and systems designed by transformed humans. Training exercises were conducted in the outer solar system, preparing for the battle everyone knew was coming. Jacob stood in the war room beneath, Earth's defense headquarters, surrounded by holographic displays showing the solar system. Red markers indicated the 17 cleaner ships approaching from different directions. Blue markers showed Earth's defensive positions. "They'll arrive simultaneously," Amy reported. The Earth Defense Ship Unity hung in space like a monument to human determination. It was the largest warship humanity had ever built, 3 kilometers long and bristling with weapons that existed in multiple dimensions. Jacob Harrison stood on its bridge, surrounded by holographic displays that showed information across 11 dimensions of reality. Around him, his crew worked at stations that would have been incomprehensible to normal humans. The displays showed probability clouds, quantum entanglements, and dimensional distortions. Every person on the bridge was awakened, their glowing, blue eyes moving rapidly as they processed information that flowed through multiple levels of reality. "Enemy contact in 30 minutes, Amy Chen reported from her station. She had become the fleet's primary sensor officer. her ability to sense the cleaners better than any technology. All 17 ships are on schedule. They're going to hit us from every direction at once. Jacob nodded. All ships report status. Reports flooded in from the 150 vessels spread throughout the solar system. The fleet was small compared to the massive cleaner ships, but each vessel was crewed by awakened humans and armed with weapons designed to fight across dimensional boundaries. Admiral Brooks appeared on the communication screen from Earth Defense Command. He looked old and tired, but his voice was steady. All civilian populations are secure in the underground shelters. Earth is as ready as we can make it. The fate of humanity is in your hands, Commander. We won't fail, sir, Jacob said. The cleaner ships emerged from the darkness between stars like predators approaching prey. They were massive beyond anything humanity had built. Each one was the size of a small moon, their surfaces covered in geometric patterns that hurt to look at. They existed partially outside of normal space, their true forms spanning dimensions that normal eyes couldn't see. But the awakened could see them clearly. Jacob perceived the cleaner ships across all 11 dimensions. He could see their quantum shields, their probability-based weapons, their dimensional drive systems. He could feel the cold intelligence controlling them, ancient and certain and completely without mercy. They're beautiful, Peter Walsh said softly from his science station. Like mathematical perfection made physical. They're also here to kill everyone we love, Kevin Brooks replied from weapons control. His hands moved over his console, preparing to fire weapons that could phase through normal space. That makes them ugly, no matter how pretty they look. The cleaner ships took up positions around the solar system, forming a perfect sphere with Earth at the center. They were preparing to deploy their sterilization arrays, the machines that would strip Earth of life in a matter of hours. All ships, this is Commander Harrison, Jacob broadcast across all channels. We've trained for this. We know what we're facing. The cleaners think we're primitives who will die easily. Let's prove them wrong. Let's show them what humanity has become. The Unity fired the first shot. Quantum torpedoes launched from the ship's dimensional cannons. They existed in states of superposition, simultaneously in multiple locations until they chose to collapse into definite positions. The torpedoes phased through normal space and struck one of the cleaner ships from angles that shouldn't exist. The massive ship's shields shimmered as they tried to adapt. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a section of the cleaner's crystalline hull cracked, and atmosphere vented into space. We heard it, Amy said, surprise in her voice. We actually damaged one of them. The cleaners responded immediately. Energy beams lanced out from all 17 ships, striking at the human fleet with weapons designed to disintegrate matter at the molecular level. But the human ships weren't where they appeared to be. The awakened crews had learned to put their vessels into quantum superposition, existing in multiple probable locations until the moment they chose to be hit or not. 3 cleaner beams missed their targets entirely. 2 struck human ships that had chosen the wrong probability and destroyed them instantly. 2,000 awakened lives lost in flashes of light. But the rest of the fleet survived and returned fire. The battle raged across the solar system. Human ships darted through spaces between dimensions, appearing and disappearing as they moved through folded space-time. The cleaners fired weapons that tracked across probability fields, trying to predict where the human ships would be rather than where they were. Sarah Miller commanded a wing of smaller attack ships. She had discovered that she could combine her quantum manipulation abilities with other awakened, creating fields of altered probability that protected entire squadrons. Under her guidance, 30 ships moved as one, their probability clouds overlapping to create zones where cleaner weapons were more likely to miss. Stay in formation, Sarah ordered. Focus your thoughts on survival. Push the probability toward us and away from them. The combined will of 90 awakened humans bent reality slightly. Enemy fire that should have struck home passed through empty space. Missiles that should have exploded on impact malfunctioned. The laws of chance shifted in humanity's favor, but the cleaners were adapting. Their ancient intelligence analyzed the human tactics, studied the way awakened crews manipulated quantum states. They began firing weapons that collapsed probability fields, forcing the human ships to exist in definite locations where they could be targeted. "They're learning too fast," Kevin reported as another human ship exploded on his display. "We need to change tactics or they'll figure out everything we can do." Jacob could feel the battle through his expanded consciousness. He perceived every ship, every weapon, every awakened mind fighting for survival. He could sense the cold calculations of the cleaner intelligence, adapting and adjusting with machine precision. But he could also feel something the cleaners couldn't: the creative chaos of human thought, the unpredictable spark that made humans dangerous, the refusal to follow patterns that could be predicted. "All awakened personnel," Jacob broadcast, "stop fighting as individuals. Join with me. Become part of the whole." Throughout the fleet, 47,000 awakened humans heard the command. They understood what Jacob was asking. It was dangerous, possibly fatal. Merging their consciousness could destroy their individual identities. But it might also create something powerful enough to win. One by one, they accepted the link. Jacob felt his consciousness expanding as thousands of minds joined with his. He was no longer Jacob Harrison. He was Sarah and Kevin and Amy and Peter and Carl and thousands of others. He was a collective intelligence, a hive mind that thought with the creativity of humans but with the coordination of a single entity. The merged consciousness could perceive the battle with perfect clarity. It could see the pattern of the cleaners' attacks, predict their adaptations, coordinate responses across the entire fleet simultaneously. Every ship became an extension of a single will. Every weapon fired in perfect harmony with every other. The combined entity struck back. All 148 remaining ships fired at once, not at the enemy vessels, but at specific points in space between them. The quantum torpedoes created gravitational distortions that warped space-time itself. The distortions linked together, forming a web of folded dimensions. The cleaners realized what was happening too late. They tried to move, to escape the expanding web, but their massive size worked against them. The dimensional web wrapped around all 17 ships like a net-catching fish. Then the web collapsed inward. The cleaner ships were pulled from normal space into a pocket dimension, a bubble of reality sealed off from the rest of the universe. They existed there, frozen in time, unable to escape or affect the outside world. Not destroyed, but neutralized. Locked away in a prison made of folded space-time. The pocket dimension stabilized. The battle was over. The merged consciousness began to dissolve. Jacob felt himself separating from the others, returning to his individual identity. It was painful, like being torn apart. He gasped and found himself back in his own body, his own mind on the bridge of the Unity. Around him, his crew was doing the same. Some were crying. Others sat in stunned silence. All of them had experienced something that no humans had ever felt before. They had been part of a collective consciousness, a single entity made of thousands of individuals. "Report," Jacob managed to say, his voice weak. "Enemy ships neutralized," Amy reported. She sounded exhausted. "All 17 are contained in the pocket dimension. Earth is secure." "What are our casualties?" 43 ships destroyed, 2,117 awakened personnel killed. Her voice broke. "But we won, Jacob. We actually won." Admiral Brooks' voice came through the communication system. "Commander Harrison, this is Earth Defense Command. We're reading all cleaner signatures contained. Is that accurate?" "Confirmed, sir." "The threat is neutralized." There was a long pause, then Brooks spoke again, and his voice was thick with emotion. "On behalf of the United Earth government and every human being alive, thank you. You saved us all." The next few hours were chaos. Ships limped back to port for repairs. Medical teams treated the wounded. Psychologists tried to help awakened personnel cope with the trauma of merging into a collective consciousness. The civilian population emerged from shelters to find Earth intact and the sky clear of alien threats. But Jacob couldn't celebrate. He stood in the observation lounge of the 10 years after the battle with the cleaners. Jacob Harrison stood in the garden on Mars Colony 7. Real trees grew here now, transplanted from Earth and modified to survive in the thin atmosphere under the protective dome. Children played among them, laughing and chasing each other. Some of the children had glowing blue eyes. The next generation of awakened, born to parents who had undergone the transformation. Beautiful, isn't it? Amy Chen stood beside him watching the children. She had left the military 5 years ago to focus on research. Her hair was streaked with gray now, though her eyes still glowed with that otherworldly light. "I never thought I'd see this," Jacob admitted. "After the battle, I thought we'd spend the rest of our lives waiting for another attack. But life just continued. That's what humans do best. We survive, we adapt, we keep going." Amy smiled. The cleaners probably didn't expect that. They thought defeating us would be simple. They didn't understand human stubbornness. A young girl ran up to them, her eyes glowing brightly. She couldn't have been more than 8 years old. "Mr. Harrison, my teacher says you fought the aliens. Is that true?" Jacob knelt down to her level. "It is true. A long time ago, before you were born. Were you scared?" "Very scared. But I had friends with me, and together, we were brave enough to do what needed to be done." The girl considered this seriously. "I want to be brave like you when I grow up." "I'm sure you will be," Jacob said. "What's your name?" Emma Collins." "My mom says I was born awakened. I've always had these eyes." She pointed to her glowing gaze. "Some of the other kids think they're weird. They're not weird. They're special. They mean you can see things other people can't. That's a gift." Emma smiled and ran back to her friends. Jacob stood slowly, feeling the weight of his years. He was 60 now, and the transformation had slowed his aging but not stopped it. He wondered sometimes how much longer he would live. "The new generation is growing up," Amy said. "Children who never knew a world without awakened humans. To them, this is normal. Is that good or bad? Both, maybe. They don't carry the trauma we do, but they also don't understand how close we came to extinction. They take the peace for granted." Peter Walsh approached them, moving between the trees with the careful steps of someone who wasn't comfortable with nature. Even after 10 years, he preferred laboratories to gardens. "Jacob, Amy, we have a situation. You need to come to the research facility." "What kind of situation?" Jacob asked. "The kind I don't want to discuss in public." They followed Peter to the underground research complex beneath the colony. The facility was dedicated to studying the pocket dimension, where the cleaner ships remained imprisoned. For 10 years, scientists had been analyzing the suspended vessels, trying to understand their technology and the intelligence behind them. Peter led them to a sealed observation room. Through a window that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, they could see into the pocket dimension. The 17 cleaner ships hung frozen in time and space, exactly as they had been when the battle ended. Except something was different. "One of them is moving," Peter said quietly. Jacob's enhanced perception focused on the pocket dimension. Peter was right. The smallest of the cleaner ships, still larger than anything humanity had built, was shifting position. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, but definitely moving. "How is that possible?" Amy asked. "The dimensional lock should be permanent." "It was permanent for the technology we understood 10 years ago," Peter replied. "But the cleaners are millions of years more advanced than us. Apparently they've figured out how to break free." "How long until it escapes?" 3 months. Maybe 4. The dimensional barriers are degrading faster each day. When they fail, that ship will return to normal space, and the others will follow eventually. Jacob felt cold despite the warm air of the observation room. "Will it attack?" "Unknown. We've been monitoring its communications. It's been sending signals to the rest of the cleaner fleet, telling them what happened. They know we trapped them. They know we're more dangerous than they expected." "That could be good or bad," Amy said. "Either they'll decide we're too risky to mess with, or they'll come back in greater numbers to make sure they finish us off." "We need to talk to it," Jacob said suddenly. Peter blinked. "Talk to it?" "The cleaners have never communicated with us. They're machines designed to eliminate threats. They don't negotiate. They're not machines. They're intelligence. Ancient, cold, mathematical intelligence. But intelligence nonetheless. And intelligence can be reasoned with." "How do you talk to something that exists partially outside our dimension?" Amy asked. Jacob smiled slightly. "We're awakened. We exist partially outside normal dimensions too. We find a way." Over the next month, Peter and his team built a communication device that could function across dimensional boundaries. It was based on principles they had learned from studying the cleaner ships. A transmitter that sent signals not through normal space but through the quantum foam underlying reality. When it was ready, Jacob sat in the communication chamber alone. The device hummed around him, creating fields of altered space-time. Through them, he could perceive the pocket dimension where the cleaner ship was slowly breaking free. He focused his awakened consciousness and reached out. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The cleaner intelligence was vast, ancient beyond measure. It had existed since the early universe, had watched stars be born and die, had seen galaxies form and collide. To it, human civilization was a brief spark in an endless night, but the spark had burned it. That was new. That was unexpected. Jacob felt the cleaner's confusion, though confusion wasn't quite the right word, more like encountering a variable that didn't fit its equations. Humans should have been easy to eliminate. They should have died without being able to fight back. Instead, they had evolved, adapted, and trapped cleaner ships that had never been trapped before. He sent thoughts through the dimensional link. Not words, but concepts. Images of Earth. Billions of humans living their lives. Children playing in gardens. Scientists pursuing knowledge. Artists creating beauty. All the things that made humanity worth preserving. The cleaner responded with calculations. It showed Jacob mathematical proofs of why humanity was a threat. Expansion rates. Adaptation speeds. Innovation curves. By every metric the cleaners used, humans were a species that would eventually dominate the galaxy if left unchecked. Jacob didn't deny it. Instead, he sent a different concept. Choice. Humans could choose to be peaceful neighbors instead of conquerors. They could choose to respect the cosmic order the cleaners protected. They could choose cooperation over conflict. The cleaner was skeptical. It had seen too many species make promises they didn't keep. It had watched civilizations claim they would remain peaceful, only to spread like viruses across the stars. Why should humans be different? Because we almost died, Jacob sent. Because we stood at the edge of extinction and saw what we would lose. Because we know now that the universe is full of dangers greater than ourselves. We've learned humility the hard way. The exchange continued for hours. Jacob argued for humanity's right to exist. The cleaner presented its case for elimination. Neither side convinced the other, but something strange happened. The cleaner began to listen. Really listen, not just calculate. Finally, the ancient intelligence sent a proposal. Humanity would be allowed to exist, but with conditions. They could keep their home system and expand to a limited number of nearby stars. They would develop their technology and their civilization, but they would be monitored. If they showed signs of becoming the threat the cleaners feared, if they began to spread aggressively or develop weapons that could threaten the cosmic order, the cleaners would return, and next time they would come in numbers that couldn't be stopped. It was a probation period, a test. Humanity would have a chance to prove they could be trusted, but that chance could be revoked at any time. Jacob emerged from the communication chamber exhausted. Amy and Peter were waiting for him. Well, Amy asked. They're giving us a chance, Jacob said. We get to live. We get to grow. But we're being watched. If we abuse that chance, they'll come back and finish what they started. That's not freedom, Peter said. That's a leash. It's survival, Jacob replied. It's more than most species probably get. The cleaners could have just waited until all their ships broke free and attacked again. Instead, they're willing to negotiate. That's unprecedented for them. What happens to the trapped ships? Amy asked. They'll be released. They'll leave our space and return to the darkness. As long as we keep our side of the agreement, they'll leave us alone. Over the following weeks, the dimensional barriers around the pocket dimension were carefully dissolved. One by one, the cleaner ships emerged back into normal space. They hung silently in the void for a moment, as if contemplating the species that had trapped them. Then they turned and accelerated away, moving faster than light toward the empty spaces between galaxies. The last one lingered. Jacob stood on the bridge of the Unity, watching the massive ship through his enhanced perception. He could feel the ancient intelligence studying him, memorizing him, remembering the human who had convinced it to show mercy. Then it too departed, and the solar system was empty of alien presence. Earth held a celebration. Billions of people rejoiced.